In the battle against the coronavirus outbreak, we want to share some stories of foreigners who have joined the battle in China. At the epicenter in Wuhan is an Iranian barista who brews and delivers coffee to doctors and nurses on the front line. Meanwhile, the Jewish community has donated masks to Shanghai, a city that rescued Jews during the Second World War. And an American businessman who has lived in China for 20 years wrote an essay that helped highlight China's response to the epidemic. So what are the experiences amid this crisis, and what are their views of the challenges that China faces today? To learn more, I'm happy to talk from Shenyang, Mario Cavolo, founder and CEO of M Communications Group. From New York, Rabbi Shalom Greenberg. And later on, we'll be joined by Sina Karami from Wuhan. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. So let me start with you, Rabbi Greenberg. Nowadays, facial masks seem to be coveted products and goods everywhere in the world. But you decided to donate 10,000 masks to the city of Shanghai. What inspired you?
Good evening. My name is Shalom Greenberg, as you mentioned, and my wife and I have been living in Shanghai since 1998. We are the founders and the directors of the Shanghai Jewish Centers. At this time, we ourselves and our community members looked around Shanghai and asked ourselves, what can we do to help our neighborhood, to help our community, to help the place, the city where we live? And when we saw the first days of the epidemic, the long lines to waiting to purchase the face masks, we knew that there are those people who cannot stand online. There are those people who are not able to do it, the senior citizens, the disabled. So I contacted my good friend, Mr. Chen, the curator of the Shanghai Jewish Refugee Museum, and asked him if he and his volunteers will be willing to go from door to door and give out the masks for the elderly in his neighborhood. And of course, he joined me in the efforts to make it happen. This was just the first donation of the Jewish community. A few days later, we received more than 5,000 children's face masks, and we contributed it to the Fudan Children's Hospital. A few days later, we received more face masks, and from our members of the Jewish community, and we donated it to other elderly people in the other neighborhoods in the city. This is just natural for the Jewish community to try to support at this time.
You mentioned Jewish community in Shanghai. Probably a lot of people in the rest of the world don't understand why there is a Jewish community in Shanghai. What is the history to this?
Well, actually, the Jewish community goes back a long time in Shanghai, from 1850s. But the most special time that the Jewish people had a bond with Shanghai is during the World War II, when it's actually a story that was is not told and not too many people know about. That during the World War II, when most places in the world shut their doors on the Jewish people who were in need to run away from Central Europe, where they were hated and they wanted to destroy the Jewish people at the time during the Nazi era, during the Shoah. More than 20,000 people, Jewish people, found refuge in Shanghai. And you know, as the director of the Jewish Center, I welcomed many of them who came to visit Shanghai in the last 20 years. And they all told me again and again that when they came to Shanghai, they were welcomed with a friendly attitude by the local Chinese community, and that brought them back the dignity as human beings. And for that, they were so grateful, and they will always be grateful for it. So, for us, Shanghai symbolizes this kind of approach towards people in need, in time of need. And therefore, it is not coincident that I chose the first contribution of the Jewish community to be in the Shanghai Jewish Refugee Museum to bring out this point that many years ago, these people, the elderly people that then they were children, they were very, them and their families were very welcoming and very friendly to our people. So this is our time to contribute back to the same people.
And you mentioned the Second World War. Of course, the Jews were discriminated against during that time. But now it seems the Chinese are suffering the same thing. A lot of Chinese nationals, and even Asians, are looked down upon because there is a virus coming out from China. And there are racist and xenophobic words and slurs against those Chinese. What do you say to them?
It is unfortunate, and as we just mentioned, our people are not new to this, and the only way to bottle this and to stop this is by bringing education to people, educating them that everyone is created in the image of God. All humans are equal. It doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter your color, it doesn't matter your shape, it doesn't matter where you come from. Especially if you are in a time of need, this is a time to help. This is a time to stretch out your hand and say, what can I do to help you? Not a time to push you away, not a time to put you down. The opposite. And this is all about education. We must educate people again and again and work on it very hard. So hopefully there'll be no more bigotry, there'll be no more hate in this world.
Mr. Cavolo, I know you wrote a piece on this, how the Chinese were treated differently because of the outbreak of this virus. And you also wrote books on China. What do you think it is happening in China is viewed differently by some people in the rest of the world?
Well, I conclude a little differently than our wonderful other guests. God bless you. The wonderful Jewish concession center area up in the North Sichuan Beilu area there in Shanghai. It's wonderful to hear that story and be reminded of that. But he said education is going to be helpful. Yes, of course. My take is the problem is the top-line Western media a lot of the time. My conclusion is that's a problem. That's constantly a problem. It's been a problem for a decade. They intentionally word and frame headlines and top lines, even on good news about China, with a negative slant. They frame it with a negative slant, and then if there is good news, they bury the lead down in the article. They do this on purpose. They've been doing this on purpose for a long, long time. And the conclusion is, yes, they're doing it, and I found myself saying, I'm sick of it, I'm tired of it. Well, little did I know that a few tens of millions of Chinese and foreigners agree with me.
But the conventional wisdom is that this is a public health crisis. It can actually happen anywhere in the world. And the Chinese response seems to be criticized on its merits.
To say that it's reasonable and sensible, obviously that's not what's happening, right? And again, that's the frustration. It's not reasonable and sensible to see the response on its merits. The classic use of generalization. China made this horrible mistake early on. China did this. China, China, China. You generalize by saying the word China rather than looking specifically at individual specific situations. This is a tool, a technique that is often used in the media and in persuasive writing, generalization like that. And everybody needs to be careful of it because it's tricky and it's intentionally misleading. I'm tired of it, and I'm amazed that I'm speaking for tens of millions of people in the past week who are just fed up with it, feeling that same way.
Yeah, what probably to generalize is people's habit when they don't have exposure to that kind of life. You have been living in China for many years. How would you describe your experience living and working here, and what are the specific examples that you draw from?
The specific examples that I draw from in my life here in China over 20 years is that I have watched and been a part of a middle-class life where anything I want to be able to do is possible. Now, in a, quote, communist society, everyone works on a farm and is given a wage and nobody does anything. You know, this is the image of that word communist. So in the West, the headline is always, a newspaper is Communist China propaganda arm of the Chinese government, but in the West they call it a newspaper. So they use that word communist to mislead people. Well, I've been here, and for example, let's look at the way businesses can start up. We have an amazing situation. I've been able to live and build a life. My wife is able to live and build a life and careers as entrepreneurs. You want to start a business? Go register a business. In fact, they even give you 100,000 RMB a month in tax incentives right now, you know, to support your business. So that sounds like a economy and a life where you can build your own life, have a successful life, as well as you could anywhere in the world. That's a wonderful thing to be able to share and see. What I've seen happening over the last 20 years, and it just keeps getting better and better.
And you described China's response after the outbreak of this new strain of coronavirus. How would you characterize China's response since January?
I would characterize China's response since January as broad, unprecedentedly broad, unprecedentedly aggressive together. We all know exactly what I'm referring to. Again, what does the Western media do? Weeks later, we're into February, and they still go back to, oh, well, you know, early on there were local officials that should have reported it sooner and made some mistakes. Well, we know that. We agree. China agrees. China was mad at them too, and that's being dealt with, and now we've moved on past that to this broad, aggressive, unprecedented response that the world is now looking at as a case study in governance, in how a society can manage and deal with and control and protect. I use those two words together because that's what this is, controlling and protecting people. How can a government in society, moving down from this macro of government, society, down to communities, down to individual family households of moms, dads, and kids, and grandmas and grandpas. How could we possibly manage a situation to do what we've done here in this last 3 weeks in China? It's borders on miraculous, and it's still going on. It's going to go down as a case study for coming out of it. It's going to be a case study to look at for many months to come.
You mentioned very aggressive response, but some people say extraordinary, some say draconian or extreme. They are saying the response from the Chinese government are over the top, sometimes too extreme. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, I say to that, we're right back to framing. Is the response extreme? Yes. Well, we can all say the response should be extreme. We have a virus that is particularly nasty. Now, come on, it's not as bad as Ebola, it's not as bad as MERS, but it's definitely particularly nasty. There should be concern. People should feel some sense of serious concern about it. An extreme response is warranted. And we know what those extreme responses are. You can ask me about the specific measures, right? When I go out of my gate every day, come back into my gate, every apartment complex, this is here in Shenyang, they check you in, take a photo of you, and take your temperature to make sure you don't have a temperature. I mean, this is happening all over the country. It sounds extreme. What will the Western media call it? Extreme to protect people? To protect families? No, they'll say, oh, that's draconian communism. It's to protect human beings. And might I add, to start by protecting human beings in China is also the effort to protect people all over the world. Yeah. Instead of being seen in that positive way, no, they're going to twist it and they're going to paint it extreme. They use the word draconian.
And actually, the Director General of the WHO actually mentioned that point. Because of the extraordinary efforts of China to contain the virus, that's why it hasn't spread in large scale to other parts of the world. And he is concerned about those countries with weaker public health systems might not withstand the shock from such a virus.
That's right. And instead of saying thank you for this extraordinary, unprecedented effort, in the middle of it, a few days ago, the Wall Street Journal puts out a headline, "China is the sick man of Asia." Pretty disrespectful and inappropriate by any measure. And this is not the National Enquirer, you know, a gossip newspaper for fun in Hollywood. This is a mainstream, top-line Western media. I'm so happy to have brought it up. I'm so happy tens of millions of people have noticed that I brought it up. That's what this is. This is a fight. It's become a fight, actually. So it's become a fight. It's become a war. And the opposite effect is happening. Number one, the joy of spring is coming soon. This extraordinary response by everyone in China, everyone, you asked about my family earlier, we're 3 weeks at home doing nothing except making a point of isolating ourselves. The Baoan, the guards in our garden, have put tissues taped to the wall and say, use a tissue when you touch the elevator button. It's the little details like that. It's extraordinary. And therefore, as you said, this is going to be over soon. And the joy of spring is coming. And then, you know what? And I sound a little bit like a preacher, but I know it and I know I'm right. That by the end of the year, in fact, things are still going to turn out even better than originally planned and laid out for 2020. I have no doubt about it in my mind, because a spirit has risen up.
And Rabbi Greenberg, I want your take on this.
Do you think people feel it?
We should have different metrics and even rules regarding a public health crisis and the government and people's response?
It's very interesting what my colleague over here said. I truly believe that the effort that the people of China are doing right now as a government and as the people is extraordinary. It's extreme measures for extreme times. These measures are very good for the population. It's very good to fight the virus. I see only positive in it. It's unfortunate if other people twist it around, but like my friend said before, definitely the spirit of the people are aroused to come together and make the effort to fight this virus and to bring China back up to the strength that they had before. And I'm sure that this will help it not only to come back to the strength that it had before, but even to go a step forward. But it's not only about the economic strength. In my opinion, it is also the strength of the people of uniting, becoming more together, more making effort towards one another. It's more of the social, the communities that are coming together now, that this will stay much longer after the virus. The virus will be gone, but the friendship and the support of different communities and different parts of the country are coming together and helping each other. This will definitely will stay much longer, and this will increase and help China in many different ways.
But people
I truly hope and pray that.
But people are paying the price
Sorry.
here in China. I think also in Shanghai, because people's freedom of movement were restricted, and there's a lot of inconvenience in their everyday life. Do you think all these are worth it? And what is the argument that their freedom is restricted?
It's definitely worth it.
Yes.
It's definitely worth it, and it's voluntarily. People are imposing on themselves restrictions much more than the government is asking for. People in Shanghai, I've been moving around trying to support the communities in need. I saw that people are voluntarily not going out to the street if they don't need to, and if they go to shop or to take care of whatever they need to take care of and come right back home. People understand that this is for their sake, for their own good. Who would want to go out? Who would want to congregate and put himself in danger? People are happy that the government is making these efforts and are volunteering their help in any way they can to make it happen. So the virus should be over as soon as possible and be able to go back to normal life. Who would want to be in a situation where the epidemic goes on, and the virus goes on, and people in their neighborhood and their families will get sick and be in danger of life. Who wants to be in that situation? So everyone is supporting this idea of doing everything we can to stop it, take the most difficult, most strongest measures to stop the virus, so we will be able to have a normal life right after.
About the international response, we have seen the WHO advising against the travel ban to and from China. Mr. Cavolo, it seems that there are a lot of people from elsewhere are trying to leave this country. First of all, do you understand this? And what do you say to those people who decided to stay? And it seems this is a hard choice.
I agree completely. This is a hard choice. I know some friends who left, and I know some people like myself, many like myself, who are staying, and it is a hard choice. We can understand a degree to which people who are the leaders responsible for governance have to make some choices and say, hey, for a while let's delay, let's restrict travel for a while, but let's do it in a reasonable way without the negative response. For the people who are staying, let me say for a moment, because we've talked about the uniting of the Chinese people here, and that's an amazing thing, but guess what? There's hundreds of thousands of foreigners here, and foreign businesses here, and American foreign businesses here. Let me say it. I just received an email as a member of the American Chamber. 205 million RMB of cash donations from over 100 American companies here in China. So the foreigners who, cash donation, done. That is how much has been raised by the American Chamber in China. And so we understand because we're all here together with the Chinese people.
Well, thank you so much. This is really uplifting. But we also seen those patients that have been treated in those makeshift hospitals. They have been trying to demonstrate their positivism and their spirits by dancing in the wards and trying to embrace what is coming their way. What do you want to say to them?
The Guangchangwu ladies, right?
Yeah.
We have to explain to the Western world, because this is an English show for the international for the international audience. Every morning and every evening, the lovely older, mostly ladies, but some men too, the lovely older folks, the retired people, they know how to start and end their day. They go out and they do the Chinese version of line dancing down in their gardens and all over the squares. And it is a joy. It's a sweet joy in Chinese culture. And it's an amazing thing. It doesn't exist in the West. What does it do? It signifies, it represents, it shows us exactly that sweet side, that heartfelt and natural side of Chinese society and Chinese people. And it's a wonderfully sweet little uplifting thing, and we need that now too.
Another interesting aspect of the response is that doctors and nurses from elsewhere in China came in thousands, if not tens of thousands, to Wuhan, which is the epicenter of the outbreak, and they're risking their lives and health to try to help those colleagues who are physically strained because of days of care for the patients. This seems to be because of China's scale and organizational capabilities, which is in a way unique to this country.
Well, that's exactly right. I believe Xi Jinping made a call for saying something like that. This is a wartime stance, you know. 1.3 billion people united together to fight a tiny little virus, to fight it and beat it, and nowhere do we see more sacrifice, that Chinese word xisheng, right? That sacrifice is with the medical workers. Wow, what they are doing, putting themselves on the front line. So let's do everything to send out our spirit of support and prayer for them for what they're doing. It's incredible, and once again, isn't this another thing that's causing everyone to unite together with a rising pride? A rising pride.
And now we have Sina Karami on the line. He's a barista at Wakanda Coffee in Wuhan, in the epicenter. So Sina, I know that you had a chance to leave Wuhan, the epicenter, but you chose to stay. Why?
Yeah. When I got a chance to back to my country, the charter flight came here, and the first thing came to my mind. I said, okay, if Americans back to America, or the foreigners back to their country, where the Chinese can go back, where the Chinese can go. This is their land. They can't leave this land. So I'm a Chinese now, and I will stay here like a Chinese, and this is my home now. And I will stay with Chinese, and we will fight with this virus.
But you not only chose to stay, you kept your business running. I know a lot of businesses in Wuhan were shut down because of the outbreak, but you chose to open your coffee shop, and you send your people to deliver coffees to nurses and doctors in hospitals. That is really something.
Yeah, you know what? At first, we didn't care about the business. We just cared about the doctors and nurses. As you said, the doctors and nurses are doing really great job in this time. They're doing such a great things. We was thinking about that, how we can help them, how we can help them in this situation. And we know that they need a coffee, they need something to give them the motivation, they need the people's help. So we decided to keep doing and make the best coffee with a good quality for them, and just we keep doing that, and this is the best thing we could do for them.
And I know a lot of people living in elsewhere, in the rest of this world, are saying you are crazy because we shouldn't expose ourselves to danger. You should have left Wuhan. But how are you doing in there? And what is your plan?
Yeah, we know the virus is dangerous, is really bad things, and is really dangerous for Wuhan. But how about doctors and nurses? They're not afraid. So we are not gonna afraid too. We will keep continue. We will keep doing our best for them, and just appreciate them. Just for appreciate them, we will stay here, and we don't expect anything from anybody. Just we wanna keep doing and just support the doctors and nurses. That's what we wanna do.
Okay. Lastly, I want each of you to say a few words to those people who are still struggling with the outbreak in Wuhan. Sina, what do you say to those people living in the same city as you did?
I want to tell that people, I want to talk to the foreigners. I want to tell the foreigners who live in the Wuhan. I want to tell them, when China was in peace and calm, you was working here, you was doing everything here, you was studying here, and now, when we have a small problem, you leave. You left the people in this situation.
Okay.
You left your friends. Where are you now? Your friends need you now. But we can stay here together.
Mr. Cavolo, what would you say?
I said.
Everyone in Wuhan has the toughest.
Yes, Cavolo.
Everyone in Wuhan has the toughest situation. So.
Yeah. In this situation.
Everyone
also,
in Wuhan has the toughest.
Maybe there is an overlap of your voices. But anyway, thank you very much. We're running out of time. Thank you, Mr. Cavolo, and thank you, Sina, and thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
God bless everyone in Wuhan.
People say a friend in need is a friend indeed. Maybe in this time of an outbreak and of epidemic, it is too much to ask our friends and guests to be at our side. But for those who chose to stay with us, it really warmed our hearts and lifted our spirits. Thank you so much. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Zhu in Beijing. Goodbye.